But they're doing pretty good, I guess.
In 1938, we could have killed Hitler.
That's a
and work as a team with our fantastic support staff to provide practical solutions to your legal matters. Whether it be family law, criminal defense, land use and zoning, or complex litigation, probate litigation, business, and regulatory matters, the attorneys at Crawford, Modica, and Holt are here to serve you. Call us for all your legal needs at 352-432-8644.
made no sense.
How are you? Good. Good. How you doing, Mayor? Yeah.
See the finance. How are y'all doing? Calling in. Do we
Okay.
have him on audio? Okay. Barbara won't be here, but you know. Yeah, that's nice. We get an intermission, I'll have a bagel maybe.
You better get it now.
No intermission.
Yeah, Tim. I like that. I like that idea.
That's Mr. Hill.
Actually, I have the Claremont City Manager sitting on, not City Manager, Claremont City Finance Director. So, sorry, if you share me his contacts, I'll reach out. Getting on the invite to go out. So what I want to do, already went out. So we've got quite a bit of people on there. Here, I'll share
I'll
them.
buy him lunch and say that the mayor wants to
I'll
buy
take care of
you.
it.
See, Anna's CFO, and so he knows the whole thing.
Good. She had her first infusion a couple weeks ago, about 2 weeks. I was in traffic. It seems to be working really good. Yeah, it's reoccurring.
Is it?
Um, with the medication, it's everything.
Are we getting started?
Okay, good morning. The date is April 16th, 2026, and the time is 10:31. And I am calling to order the workshop of the City Council of the City of Groveland, Florida. Jenny, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Keith Kehoe.
Here.
Vice Mayor Barbara Gaines excused absence. Councilmember Amy Jo Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Michael J. Cox.
Here.
Councilmember Stephen Chilkowski.
Here.
Interim City Manager Tim Maslow.
Here.
City Attorney Anita Gerasi Carver. Sergeant at Arms Lieutenant Sammy Anderson. City here.
Thank you. Did I hear Steve say yes, he's here?
Yes.
Steve, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just muted, so can you hear me loud and clear?
Yep, we got you. Thank you so much. Moving
Yep.
right into the agenda, the first item on the agenda is discussion, direction for city attorney request and proposals. Dio, do you want to present?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. This particular item was brought forth to discuss and to get direction from you all. So initially, we came with the intent of bringing you a timeline as to how we were going to go about working to select a city attorney for the city of Groveland. But since then, we've worked with staff. We have a new procurement manager, Ms. Coralie Vasquez. I'd just like to take a moment just to introduce you all to her so you know who she is. She is a very important stakeholder. So Coralie, if you don't mind coming up and just introduce yourself to the council and members of the public.
Hi, my name is Coralie Vasquez. I'm your new procurement manager.
Thank you. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Speak into the microphone, please.
Absolutely. I actually have worked for government for the past 25 years. Miami-Dade County was one of them, Osceola County, and Kissimmee Utility Authority. So I have about close to 30 years of experience in procurement.
Very good, very good. Well, welcome. I'm sure the whole staff, the whole council at least says welcome, welcome, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So with the impending departure of Anita, as you all know, a city attorney is really a vital part of the city leadership that provides a much-needed direction for the city, ensure that we're following the law, protects the city from lawsuits, provide guidance to the city, among other things, and help support us when we have contract negotiations, etc. So there were just some discussions along the line, different workshops, and how we were going to approach legal services for the city. Some of the directions were for us to hire, get an interim to be a stopgap. So Fishback Dominic was one of those forms that we discussed. We have that item on the agenda to have Fishback Dominic support us on the interim until we execute an RFP. So in front of you, you have a draft RFP that I've worked with staff to provide. This is just a draft. Any timelines or information that are in there as a draft, we're working on finalizing this document. What I've done for you, though, is summarize some of the key points. I know not everybody's going to read a 40-something page document. There's a lot of legal language and so on there. So I've summarized the document into a four-page, which kind of highlights some of the important provisions that are contained within this RFP that we're intending to put out. So if you feel free to read the entire document. Anyone wants to provide any kind of input, we're happy to take input. The summary does give you a good idea of what's in the document as well. So again, please review at your leisure. I'll be providing this document electronically to all of you after this meeting, so you'll have a good idea if you wanted to start search on certain items in the document and review it. Our idea is to issue this tentatively, these dates are tentatively, so I just want to stress that, April 21st, and open solicitations on May 19th and public bid on May 19th. So we're looking towards sometime end of May to be able to come back with something more definitive to you, some recommendations.
Very good, nicely done. Do we have any questions, Mr. Jaycox?
Sure. My quick review of this, I'd like you to add into the RFP the actual people they're proposing to send to the meetings, okay? Because you are going out to firms. So we want to know the direct qualifications of the people they're proposing to send to us. And we also want to know their review process. We had the head of the firm before. Now we're going to have, a junior person. So we want to know if they have a supervisor or a review process of everything that their underlings do under the auspices of their firm. So that has to be added in here as well. Other than that, this looks great.
Steve, do you have any questions? Does Steve have this document? Were we able
I
to-
do not. So if you guys could send it over to me, that would be very, very helpful. But from what Mr. Jaycox said is, I agree with. And just knowing the other cities that they are actively working with would be helpful, because then we could reach out, I could reach out my own to Winter Garden or COE or others and just see how they're liking the firm or the individual who's the attorney.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Amy Jo?
Same, I definitely would like to know who they're currently representing, and other than that, I think all sounds good.
Okay, and I have no questions. I'll send them back to you, okay, once I read it. Does that conclude? Next item on the agenda, discussion, direction, assessment of Finance Department to improve efficiencies. Michelle?
Good morning, Mayor, Council. I am pleased to introduce you today, Mike Fitzgerald with Clarion Financial. Mike has stepped in to be our interim CFO to make sure we get the audit on time, work with us through budget. And so the assessment, I believe you guys had an opportunity to review it beforehand, and what he's learned about Groveland, and perfect, thank you. And where we're at. So, Mike?
Morning, everybody. Glad to be here. 2-hour drive from Tampa. Continue to see the growth up here, so loving it. I guess I was asked to put my bio in just to give you a feel of the background, but we're based out of Tampa Bay at Clarion, and I've got a couple government certifications, and my whole life has been in public sector to include active duty military. And then the back half of my career, I've been at various cities, counties, as well as in Washington, D.C. at the federal level. So I've been as low as 2 or 3 employees, as high as, over 5,000, 10,000 employees at an organization. So you should have like a 2 or 3 page short version if you had your read ahead, and then we'll just walk through this 25, 30 page fairly quickly. And it should be fairly straightforward, and I'll be glad to take any questions as we go along or at the end. So we'll start off with what is a finance department assessment? And we also included HR in this one, but it's simply looking at your people, your processes, and your technology, right? So people, process, technology. And so you bring an outside firm in, and they get to take a fresh look at what's going on. So we're going to start off actually on this presentation diving into the processes first. Then we'll take a look at the IT systems to support finance and HR. And then we'll look at the structures, the people, the org chart. So let's start off with a couple key findings. Before I jump into that, I do want to compliment the finance and HR staff. When I got here about 90 days ago, like anything, they're going to be nervous. The outsider's here asking them questions and interviewing them one-on-one. But I could tell right away the morale was high. They're working hard. They believe in Groveland, all the right things. And that's the first thing as an outsider looks at, even like your external auditors when they come in, right? You got good people. So that's the first thing. Like any government organization, there's always some opportunity for improvement, right? So let's stay focused on the positives here. So some key findings: workforce instability. We've had like about 3 directors in 4 years, so the leadership's been revolving. The current Tyler software IT system that was implemented in 2022 was not fully implemented, and therefore your staff is, getting about a 50% return on investment. So we'll talk about that a little bit. With that, obviously, comes some training deficiencies. There's just not enough time. There's turnover, there's vacancies, and it's hard to learn something new sometimes. The good news is there's been immediate action that's taken place in all these things that I'm listing, and we'll go through that. Michelle's been a phenomenal leader over in the finance area as far as attending the meetings, things of that nature. But moreover, when her and I debriefed every day, we said, do we wait 90 days for my report, or do we start right away? And so she said, Mike, we're going to start right away. So we've already started implementing these, and you'll see that shortly. As a result of the implementation, accountants are forced to do manual workarounds, right? A lot of paperwork instead of paperless, so you get some inefficiency. And then the organizational structure, I've got some recommendations for realignment that I see at other locations. And everybody's different, but you pick a little here, and it might work real well here. So from a maturity assessment, just taking a look at what's going on as, a fresh set of eyes, they seem to be transaction-focused versus strategic, right? In other words, I'm drowning, right? I'm in quicksand. So low system adoption, some high manual dependencies, and limited real-time reporting capabilities initially, right over the last couple of years with the new system. And just jumping a little bit to the risk, they just completed the 24 audit, got that just in time, albeit late. So your immediate risk are when you have an accounting department like this, missed reporting deadlines are possible. You have some compliance issues that might be lacking. I really want to point out capital projects and grant accounting. With $200 million in capital projects that are going on right now, that needs to be seriously looked at from a back office to manage those. There's going to be some issues in the next 2 to 3, 4 years with compliance. Medium-term risk, budget forecasting inaccuracies. I'm not saying we have them. They're just things to be considering. Cash flow visibilities and vendor payment delays, right? All right. Let's step into the first area of processes. We'll take a look at maybe the current audit findings, take a look backwards, and then come forward. So this chart right here is simply just a summary from 2022 to 2023 and 2024, where I went through and read the audit findings. So you've seen these before. It's not uncommon where I see significantly more findings at other municipalities, so I was very happy to see this is a handful. Typically auditors, they like to do their job. They're going to find at least one thing each year, right? So this looks really good. And lastly, they've already been implemented. So compliments to finance management staff and other leadership to get these done. Now, when you talk about audits, and this is important, this is an educational slide for you all. Auditors come in and they break things down, and when you get an accounting degree and you go through that discipline, we call it the revenue cycle. And so they're going to come through and they're going to pull samples and drill down and interview you, and they're going to walk through some of these boxes right here. They're going to look at revenue, and that's accounts receivable, your cashiering, your banking, and they're going to go dig through these processes. And it's obviously very important to simplify this process and, improving overall welfare for the municipality. The second side of the audit cycle is the expenditure cycle, which are your outflows. Revenues are inflows, expenditures are your outflows. And you can see along the top, these are a little bit more common to us because we know about the requisitions and purchase orders, and then we receive a vendor invoice, and then we've got to make our payment through a cash disbursement cycle. Also on the outflow on the bottom half there is the payroll expenditure, right? So not only are we paying our folks, we got a lot of liabilities that we need to pay for as well. Things like health insurance, dental, FUCA, FICA, et cetera. Also from an educational perspective, I'd like to remind everybody about segregation of duties. Very important to keep this in the back of your mind. You do see occasionally in a newspaper where a municipality had fraud. I didn't see that here. That was not my scope of work. My organizational structure recommendations are to ensure separation and segregation of duties, right? An example might be you have an HR department, the director can hire, they're managing the recruit to retire process, the time and attendance, and then payroll reports them as well. So that is a fraud triangle where you could have shadow employees off the books. Another example in accounting might be one person's in charge of setting the vendors up in the system. They're in charge of approving the requisitions. They can pay false vendors, and then they open the bank statements up for the bank reconciliation. So very small municipalities, you'll see that, and people end up in public news, right? Get themselves in trouble. So we want to make sure we are building a structure that is strong for the future growth of Groveland. So I did sit down from a processes perspective, and I interviewed each person in the finance department. We have over 17 people that make up the, quote, finance department, which is really a misnomer because I like to look at things as the accounting department. I want to, I need to get my bills paid first. Let's focus on accounting. Budgeting's nice and procurement's nice, but the accountants are the ones that are carrying a lot of the weight. So you can see here in finance, there's about 136 documented processes, human resources 26, procurement 23, risk/insurance 9, utility billing 92. So I was able to obtain about 286 documented processes that your team is doing. It's pretty hefty. Now let's take a look at the IT systems that are helping your staff. So we know it's Tyler is our first thing. It's called ERP, right? Enterprise Resource Planning, the Oracles, the SAPs of the world, so Tyler. On the right, I asked the IT director to provide me a top map, a 30,000-foot view of all the various systems that your accounting staff must manage to do their job. On the left is a quick summary for you. You've got OpenGov for e-procurement, Civic Plus for parks and HR, Trackit for the building department. You've got a Clarion for the lease accounting, the new GASBs that came out. You're using ClearGov for your capital projects. By the way, in Tyler, the projects and grants module was not implemented in phase 1 in 2022. Hence, you're having some visibility issues with capital projects. Corpay is your check provider, and that's being changed, but ExecuTime for your time and attendance, Neptune for your utility meters, and BDS for your utility online bill payment. A lot of things are coming in and moving fast. This is a summary of phase 1 of your Tyler implementation back in 2022. I do not remember the gentleman's name, but I think it was a male, that finance director at the time, I believe, if I have my records wrong. And then it went into, was it Pam and Joanne? Thank you very much. So going back to this era right here, so the EnerGov was not actually installed, another solution was used. Encode is the primary for the big three, right? Financials, personnel, and utility. We mentioned ExecuTime for time and attendance, and then content management, and then EAM was not installed. So taking a look at that and sitting down with Michelle and giving her my upfront, we said, let's just go. Are we going to opt out of Tyler and start over, or do we want to double down? And double down was the answer, right? It's hard to go through a new implementation and change your systems and another 2 years of change management. So we looked at what was needed. And so if you look at this, we've kicked off phase 2 already for 2026 in the last 90 days. So we've got 4 in progress, and that's AP, automation, disbursement, AP invoice workflow, and actually a fifth. We kicked off position control yesterday. There's that projects and grants that we're signing with them. We want to get that module implemented quickly. Contracts management, there's no accounts receivable. Some utility, so in the last piece here, training, Tyler calls it PACE. I want to compliment again Aaron and Michelle Davis and Michelle Mishnoff on bringing in advanced training with Tyler. So they actually are scheduled every 2 weeks, and that was one of the things documented missing the last couple years. So again, progress. So let's move from that, with that background, right, of all these processes and all this technology, right? Let's take a look at the org chart. I think that's a common theme, right? Everywhere you go, it's like, are we structured correctly? Are we structured for growth here at City of Groveland? So my scope was to look at human resources in the green, finance, and not IT. That was out of scope. This is giving you a head count, and you have a recent change of HR now reporting from the COO to the city manager, I understand. So we're going to call the baseline in the recent state 25 employees on a go forward, but there's 28 on the board here. So let's start talking about some possible structural realignment. This is a lot to look at, and don't worry about the details, all right? So on the far left is your procurement, and let's use the word department just to keep it simple. It could be divisions or sections, but a procurement department, a budgeting department, accounting department, and I'm in the blue level there, accounting department and utility billing department. So currently coming through the finance director, current state, again, that 17.5 FTE we hear about. We're gonna recommend some growth to you here in the coming slides of at least a body or two. Not significant. It's by moving some people lateral, right? Matching, so we got workload balance. You can see at the bottom of procurement, it's 2.0 folks /2.0, so there'll be no change in the procurement department. That was vacant when we got here. I was on the interview panel, and you've met our new purchasing manager today. Budgeting had 1.5 people as a budget manager and a risk insurance person part-time. Typically, I see that in the human resource department, just to note. We'll talk about that in a second here. So that's going, and then we're recommending a budget analyst come on board with your growth, especially $200 million in capital projects. That'll help on your analysis, your reporting, your timeliness, et cetera. So that'll have a little bit of growth from 1.5 to 2.0. Let's jump over to utility billing. So on the far right, we are looking to take the UB manager position and reclassify that to the blue teal called the utility billing specialist. So that'll be a savings right there. There's some span of control questions there. They'll remain a supervisor, and then we're taking the UB accountant and moving that over to the accounting, quote, department, section, division. And then there were 4 UB customer service reps in the windows, and we're going to remove one of those and bring that over to accounting. So that brings us to the accounting, which is really the 80-20 rule, right? It's accounting. So we're going to have 2 accounting managers, also known as assistant finance directors, deputy directors, but they're accounting managers, right? We're introducing 2 new senior accountant positions. There are 2 staff accountants, and then there's 1 accounting tech, which is your AP person, Terry. And then accounting tech part-time, we are going to combine, there's 2 of them, 0.5 and 0.5, so we're going to take that 1.0, get rid of the part-timers and bring in 1 full-time accountant. You'll see lastly there, payroll tech in orange, that's a transfer. So again, my recommendations are payroll will leave HR and come to accounting, and your risk insurance will leave accounting, budgeting, and go to HR. So complicated slide, but needed to be done. So here's your structure from a future position, right? So let's take a look at the green box, your finance director. So future state is about 12 employees. So on the left, really not much change here. It's a budget manager, and we're going to introduce a new position called the budget analyst, senior budget analyst. And as you can see, their job is planning for this organization, and their deliverable is the budget book, okay? That'll be 2.0 FTEs. Moving to the right, specializing on accounting here, you'll notice utility billing is not on this slide. So this is the future of finance. We're going to have 2 teams in accounting, and it's not that they're teams, they're one team, but we're going to align them by the audit cycle. We talked about that a little bit earlier, where the auditors come in and they have already proven that accounting is a function of inflows and outflows, right? And they're going to come in and sample us and look for our deliverables. So why not align with our external auditors? And so we see this more common in other organizations, and it's really, really efficient, and you get tremendous economies of scale. So on your left will be your inflows, also some assets, but we'll stay on the revenue expenditure side. So you'll have 2 accountants and a technician in blue there, right? And then underneath that, I have an arrow saying, hey, we can add more for growth, right? So the objective here is assess, but set us up, Mike, for future growth. And so that's where we'll expand. We can add more accountants and more technicians as the transactional volume goes up. So with an accounting operations manager, that inflow team will have 4.0 FTE. Moving to the right, exact mirrored operation, but they will concentrate on the outflows, right? They'll be on the expenditure side. Same thing, accounting manager, 2 staff accountants, combination of senior accountants and staff accountants based on their years of experience, accounting technician, and in red is your payroll tech that I recommend that eventually come on over to finance. And again, the blue arrow, we're set up to expand. It would be a team of 4.0, 5 with the payroll technician. Here's we're just orating a little bit about HR. This is my view. You know, the current state is 3.0. I see a future state on the right of 2.5. Again, on the left, you've got DO, you've got, I believe, Tabitha, and then the payroll technician. So you've got a staff of 3. For segregation of duties, it's recommended as a consultant that payroll be moved to finance. Therefore, on the right side, with the reduction of the payroll technician, it would make sense to bring over the risk insurance, which is your general liability and various trip and fall instances. It makes sense in the human resource area. That's where your safety officer is a lot of times. Now, I will mention to you a little bit thin with just your HR director and HR specialist with vacations and outs, and if you're going to continue to hire and grow. So you might want to keep an eye on that for an HR manager or supervisor down the road. Okay, opportunities for improvement and timeline. So how are we going to do this, Mike? Sounds good. What are we going to do? All right, a lot on this page, opportunities for improvement. These are some summary items. And I'm not going to read every one. They're there for you. But you can take a look at processes, right? So let's start off at the top maybe. And we'll cherry pick through a few of these. So establish accounting inflow and outflow processes, right? Initiate a weekly check run. That's already been implemented. When I first got here, they were doing check runs every 2 weeks. We're not meeting a lot of Prompt Payment Act requirements. That's been corrected. So paperless, reduce unnecessary scanning. Some of our folks, I met with Jenny, very good meeting with her. We had a few of our folks over time that thought everything needed to go into Laserfish. We had one part-time employee, their job was to scan. And so we've bifurcated that out. If it's a Tyler official finance record, it stays in Tyler. No need to rescan that over to Laserfish. So thank you, Jenny. That gives us some efficiencies right there. We're looking to implement some AP automation. I got to say the number one thing I saw here, if I had to really pick one, is when we pay our vendors, they send us an invoice. Now we're going to do accounts payable and pay them. It's on paper. It's a stack of paper every check run, and we're running this stack around for approvals, and we got out of the Tyler ERP system. That's what it was built for. It's your expenditure software, and we're outside of it. So we've already implemented and signed with Tyler, and we've started the AP invoice workflow. So your outer departments, when they key in an invoice, they don't need to run that paperwork over to accounting. So it'll just be paperless. You've got 2 monitors on your desk for a reason. We're paperless, right? And we can work through and review the work and approve it and shorten that payment cycle. Now, enhanced financial reporting, that's always an issue the first 2 to 3, 4 years that I see after a new software is put in. Again, Michelle, leadership, just got back from Vegas, took her team out there to the Tyler Annual Users Conference, 7,000 people. And they came back all excited and, hey, we found that there's more reporting that we didn't know, our security wasn't set up. I sat in on this special class on capital assets. Now I know how to do depreciation. And so good job in investing, training efforts to her team. Update policies. Tim and I had a meeting with Michelle. We were talking about words like financial sustainability, right? What does that mean? And what's that framework? And how do you measure it? Well, the first thing is updating your policies. What's our investment policy? What's our debt policy? What's our cash handling policy? What is our liquidity reserves? Our rainy day fund. How many days or months operating do we need in the general fund to stay solvent? Capital assets. What's our thresholds? P cards. By the way, your P card is at 10,000. That's going to change immediately with your purchasing manager. You don't have a P card that's higher than your capital assets. Capital assets are $5,000. We need to bring that P card way down for internal controls. And procurement thresholds, she's working on that now. I throw to you the $100,000 and $250,000 threshold that come to you all is significant for the size of this community. That should come down. She'll share that with you in the future. So, IT, double down. Let's continue and get some ROI on this phase 2. We really have no choice. We got to move forward. They've already started implementing remote scan check capture. So, we take the checks in and we put them in a bank bag and we send them downtown. Now we're just scanning them right there and we're getting that daily deposit, interest earned, a lot more efficiency. So Michelle's brought that in with her banking background. Human resources for a second here. This is really focused mostly on accounting. Nothing against HR. They have the same issue with their HR software. So there are a lot of manual human resource processes. So typically when you put a job application up on the web to come work for us at Groveland, that's in a separate software than the HR system. So now I've got my applicant, it should just merge right in, but no, I gotta print it and I gotta rekey their name, social security number, and then once I own that employee and I got employee master, then we're taking care of that employee, right? Can I put in their training documents, succession planning, development, and then personnel action forms, a change of address, a change of this, benefits enrollment, and then lastly, employee self-service. I go around the governments already and you're onboarding right here. They fill out their application online, they come in for interviews, they get hired, they pick all their benefits right on their phone, right? Show up, they put a void check to get their first check sent into the system. I can resign on my phone. We're not there yet, and we should be with the growth coming. We have the software, we just, like everything, we get tired, we run out of time. It's the nature, right? And then the structure, we've talked already about that, how to just move a few things around. All right, so there's a high level. So let's talk about how long will this take, Mike, to turn, not that it's a turning around an accounting department, they're already doing it, they just needed a few more, pieces in their puzzle, some quivers in their arrow sack. So normally I like to say it takes 2 cycles to refocus and turn around an accounting department. 2 budgets, two audit cycles, right? 2 fiscal years, so 24, 36 months. I've slashed those out in red for the following. You're gonna see these green check marks on the left. So we'll start left and we'll go to right, and then if you look way at the bottom, you've got a timeline, right? So hey, the first 3 to 6 months, we need to do some identify, see what's going on, put a rudder in the water. And then we're going to move through some process redesign over the 12 months and see if we can get some short-term efficiencies, low-hanging fruit. And then ultimately, 24 to 36 months, we want to have a stable accounting department, right? We want a finance department that's best practices, top of breed, right? Best of breed. So in the upper left, hire. A lot of vacancies. When I just got here 90 days ago, people are fired up. We've got purchasing hired. We hired 2 senior accountants. So there's just, we're starting to fill those vacancies, right? Still have a finance director. We're interviewing some more next week. IT systems, phase 2. Let's improve our workflows. Let's improve our API interfaces, bringing in the other systems automated instead of downloading, bring over, upload. I mean, we can get those hooked up through APIs. Our processes, our audit cycle, we were late, not legally late, but late. We don't want to be that late. We're not going to do that again. But now that we're matching our inflows and outflows and segregation of duties and aligning with the audit cycles, you're going to see things starting to come in on time. From a re-engineering, right, best practices, I've been preaching that a lot to our folks, streamlining, and why we have paper running around. Why are we stamping stuff and putting our cost accounting on there and running it back? That's all in the system now. Tyler's fully capable of that. Over on the far right there, trained accountants. Really neat thing. You've got 2 newer accountants here, Angel and Aragod, and with Aaron, they recently went to GFOA. That's the Government Finance Officer Association, where they go to get their training. And so they've recently signed up for a boot camp to get their certification. And so that's on that second line right there. So they're going to go to an industry standard to work through and pass this national test. I happen to have it. It's Certified Government Finance Officer. And that's a testament to your team investing in themselves and their career. And then lastly, right, this is what we all want. We want a stable, efficient, effective, and proactive team. So with Michelle and I just saying, hey, let's not wait for this 90-day report. Do we both agree? We agree. Let's start implementing. And so I think we can do this less than 24 months. I know we can do this less than 24 months. Let's fill these vacancies. Give me another 30, 60 days working as the consultant with Michelle. We'll get these implemented, and you're going to start to see some benefit. We already have a weekly check run right now, right? We're starting to get vendors paid a little bit more timely. Now, as I'm closing here, I want to give you some future things to think about. Met with Tim, and he asked me, hey, can maybe you shed a little bit light on what you're seeing out there? What's the difference between a finance director and a CFO? What does that really mean? And honestly, they're used interchangeably. Those people that are not truly in the finance arena, oh, he's the finance director, she's the CFO. But they are 2 different things. They really are. And so I want to keep it simple for you. But on the left box, the finance director tends to look inward and down into the organization. They tend to be also known as a chief accountant or a comptroller, a controller, right? They're the ones that have the debit and credit knowledge. They're your degreed accountant, right? They're the CPA, they're the CGFO. They know the general ledger, they know the financial reporting. On the right side, the CFO typically is not looking down. That's not her role. So, the CFO is external. They're looking at the debt markets. They're working with bankers. They're working with this council. They're working with their community. They are strategic focused, cash flow, growth. Will I have the right debt structure so we can support it? That's what a CFO does. If you hire a CFO and make them just look straight down and tie their arms, they'll be frustrated. So that's the difference, right? One is maybe tactical and the other is strategic. So let's size that just a little bit. And again, these are generalities, right? The general rule of thumb is that you need a budget exceeding $300 million. Well, we sort of do at Groveland, right? Interesting, because we have like $200 million in capital going on. One-time money, right? 2 plants, a park. So we've just increased all this burden like we're a big city. The reality is when that's done, we're going to drop right down to 50 million. We're still small, right? When I say small, I'm comparing to other places, right? This is a big-sized city, but we're not at 300 million to 500 million. So that quite doesn't qualify because your capital is one time, one and done. 1,500 employees, I don't think DO's quite there yet with 1,500 employees, so on and so on. Now over on the right, Groveland versus your peers, rapid population, development driven, a lot of infrastructure needs, future debt, you're gonna need to raise more capital down the road. So here's the recommendation on the bottom left. I would say in the near term, 0 to 3 years, you need a strong finance director, and I think you're gonna be more than fine. Now, 3 to 7 years, I can't look into the future. You're probably looking at a CFO or, assistant city manager with a finance background or deputy city manager. So you're right on that cusp. But if you didn't have the capital, I would say you're not ready for CFO. But it's a tie. And last slide here for you, City of Claremont, our next door neighbor, what does this really say? So the finance director org chart, you got the blue and the yellow. This is in their current budget book. This is their org chart. They got a single budget manager. They have a grants and special projects manager embedded in finance. I like that. It can also be over like in TJ's area. It doesn't really matter where they are, but I'm not sure we're well staffed in this area, so it's an opportunity. And then the accounting team, and there's that chief accountant, right? There's somebody that's a heavy hitter with the general ledger. A few accountants, there's payroll, so payroll's in their finance department, and 3 accounting specialists, right? Your technicians. Now, on the upper right, let's see if we can bring this down, right? So if we just are talking apples to apples, the accounting and budgeting staff only, Claremont has 12 bodies. Now, they're a population of 51,000, and I look back 4 or 5 years ago, they were like 40,000. Let's say we're at 26,000. So Groveland's current state of accounting and budget only, you hear 17.5. Oh, finance has 17. No, they don't. They do on paper, but not from an accounting functionality. We only have 7.5 employees. So I've come out of a strong accounting department. We have 7.5 employees. That's what you need to take away from here. And so if we just wanted to match and start ramping up and use Claremont as this one example, they have 12. So if we wanted to get to 12, we need 4.5 more accountants. We recommended to you that we want to add 1.5 more people today in this plan. So just realigning and be efficient and do some workload balancing. I was able to determine that from the audit. Groveland currently has significant capital projects, as I mentioned. The goal is to support the Groveland's future growth and to scale, right? Scale the accounting and budgeting functions. So we can get you structured right. And then we have those little blue arrows. So as you get more volume, more growth in the city, more accounting transactions, you'll add more accountants and more technicians, but they're gonna be set up for success. And so I'm sort of gonna pause there. And this would be your future org chart, conceptually, right? You can see utilities, I pulled that out and put to be determined. In small cities, utilities make sense under the finance director. In mid-cities like yourselves and growing cities, it does not make sense to be in finance. It's a burden to the finance director. The reason why utilities is 80% operation and 20% like finance accounting. And so you've got your finance controller getting customer service escalation. John's water got turned off. I want to see a manager. And so your finance director is running out to the cage all the time. And so utilities is an operational function, so it really needs to be moved over to TJ or whomever down the road. And then there's payroll on the far right. So the budgeting, accounting, and payroll is your accounting department, right? Quote, finance. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Jaycox?
I like the presentation. On the slide where you showed the progress, the 12 to 24 month, you had check marks. Does that mean that those processes are already completed or in the works?
They're in progress. Good point. So we've already we're about halfway through some of those. So the ones that we could, low-hanging fruit that we could do immediately, yes, sir. And that's why I see us, with Michelle's leadership, she's moving fast, so.
Okay. Twice on the org chart, you didn't show that everybody's under the city manager. It's just a little point. You showed the CFO, everybody was under the COO, but you didn't show city manager above everybody.
Yeah, I stopped at the COO for the purposes of this. There was just a recent change in my last 90 days. I had HR under the COO, and I heard recently it's now over under the city manager.
Now, with the payroll moving to the accounting section, does the payroll and the accounting software talk to each other?
They do, absolutely. They're both inside Tyler, so yes, sir.
Okay, and now, does the HR software talk the same language as the payroll and the accounting software? Is there going to be duplications because the payroll, the HR has all the records, the employee records,
Right.
and the payroll is going to be paying them?
Right, it is set up correctly, and it's best of breed. So when you take a look at the Tyler solution, we call it human resources and payroll, right? And there's many business processes in there. Recruiting, time and attendance. So these are all the sub-modules. They're all fully integrated, and they all fully talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then payroll does talk to the accounting general ledger as well as to the budgeting module. So for April, your budgeting manager. So it's a nice suite, and there's no, having to do things twice. It's fully integrated, one touch.
Okay. Let's see. Have we separated the accounting to the ins and outs yet?
I can defer to them.
We are in the process. We're finishing up the audit, so it's all hands on deck. But for 2026, we are already starting to do that. So we have Angel doing the inflows, and we have Erigod working on the outflows and creating that, and it seems to be going very well.
Okay. Last question I have is manuals. Manuals. Are you, since you're figuring out the process, you're figuring out the way these softwares work, are you making up operational manuals for the people to follow who come afterwards?
Great question. It's not been brought up quite yet, but that is a mandatory to document your policies and procedures. So management takes care of the policies, as we know, and then procedures, I think, are what you're probably referring to. I call them a desktop manual. And so just that, I take a print screen in Tyler as I'm doing my how to cut a check run. So I take the print screens, I put them in a binder, or they're digital on the server. Should I get hit by a bus, I retire, institutional knowledge, you can just pull that binder out and let somebody bring in a temp. They should be able to follow that, so we will take care of that. It's great for bringing that up. Thank you. Yeah.
We are doing some of that because we have, when we walked in, there was no succession planning or, as well as there was nobody to be a backup. If Terry was out, nobody was able to run a payroll or to run a check run, not payroll, but a check run. And so we are creating those. We have everybody who that's their main job. They are now showing somebody else and having a book. It's not documented with Mike yet, but they all are creating that for their particular role that they do every day. So
Okay, that's a great thing, because a succession plan isn't just only about the people. It's
Correct.
about the process that they have to do.
Correct. To make sure if somebody, we don't say gets hit by a bus, we say if they win the lottery and they decide to leave, that there is somebody that can take over for them at that time.
Thank you very much.
Joe?
So most of my questions kind of evolved around secession and how long this will take to implement, which you answered. I thank you for helping evolve. We don't need to be dinosaurs. We don't need to use all the paper process. It's so much more efficient this way. So hopefully we can use all the software to do what it's designed to do to make everybody's life easier. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Steve, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Stephen.
Perfect. Okay. Just a few things. Again, thank you. I agreed with what was said previously by Jay Cox and Amy Jo. But I think we've talked a lot about consultants and using consultants. I think this was a perfect example of how we can use consultants very well. Someone with some great expertise and experience comes in for a limited amount of time, reviews what needs to be done, does an assessment, and then helps implement the actual things that need to be done. So I just, kudos to the team and the staff for working on that. I know that finance has been the priority because we missed an audit, and coming in and getting elected in November and just jumping right in. But I do think going farther, I think this should really be done with each department and each segment of the organization. It doesn't have to happen over the next, 6 months, but I think taking each of the departments, seeing if we're adequately staffed or not, and then really moving forward and making sure that we have everything we need for the next, 10 to 12 to 15 years of growth. I really like how you guys laid out our new system and our new staffing so that, when we get 10,000 more residents, we can easily plug in new people, and we don't need to bring you guys all back in again to do another assessment and be like, where do we put 2 or 3 more staff members? Like, no, we know when we hit these benchmarks that these are the people that we are going to add. I would like to advocate heavily for a grants manager or a grants coordinator. We can talk about this during the budget process. I think it's very inefficient to have each department trying to go get grants and then learn how to become a grant writer. And it would be much better if we have a centralized person like other cities have, Claremont, Eustis, others, where they just reach out to each department, and each department gives them what they need to apply for, and they are doing it at scale. So instead of just doing a few grants, they're doing 20 to 30 to 40 grants a year, and they have a great return on it. So I think that's something we could really look at. Let's see what else I have. Training. I know either Michelle or someone mentioned going to a conference. Training, when you have all of these systems, is paramount. You can have all of these nice, great systems, but if you are not dedicating the team's time to actually learning them, like just talking to staff over the past 4 months and hearing we didn't know that this software did this or could do this report, because they weren't given the time and the support by their leadership to actually get the training and know what they're doing. So kudos to the team, Michelle, and everyone for making sure that they are taking the time to do that training, so that they're using all of these softwares. Cost money, but if we're not using them fully, then we're not using the taxpayers' funds in a useful manner. Let's see. I think that might be everything I had. Yep, that's everything I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Just a few questions. How does AI fit into this? I know that we have several great communities around us that have totally integrated AI into operational and financial situations.
It's a great question. I'm seeing it everywhere. I was a keynote speaker about 7 months ago, actually, on AI from what I see in the marketplace. It's really 2 things. It's here. It does work. A Clarion company I helped found, starting employee with the owner, Andrew Laughlin. We have 3 full AI implementations in our proprietary software, just to let you know. We're a 5-year-old company, so it's fast. Tyler does have it. There are some limitations with the current software that you have, that AI is a little bit harder to bring into it because it has many structured layers. It's just the nature of Tyler, subject for another day. So you might have a little bit of slower lift there. You'll probably have to upgrade Tyler again to get it more modernized before it'll receive AI. It's not AI friendly. But yes, AI is here. So we have things like you can drag an invoice in, it'll read the invoice, it'll fill the invoice out for you, and so your employee's not typing that, and they can just review it, agree, and hit submit. I can go on and on about the different things that are coming in, to the point where I can talk to it on our software and say, I want to cut a check. Please bring up the Home Depot vendor. It'll bring up Home Depot, and it'll go right through the fields, and you're just talking to it now. Used to be accounting was a quiet place. Shh, they're Now you're going to have people talking, it's just amazing. But it's in front of us. It's not going to reduce headcount per se. I think what it'll do is it'll free up the transactional keying things in and allow your staff to be more analytical and heads up and understand what that data is telling them, what they're doing. So that's the opportunity.
So as we talk through this, I'm sorry, I didn't get this before the meeting today, but as we talk through that, let's put that in the conversation about Tyler. And if we move forward with Tyler, because that's a major component. I don't know who your guest speaker was, but the guy out of Altamont that goes around and talks on the global innovation, something, what they've integrated into building permits, into every single thing. And it's really, when you hear their side of the story, it's really fantastic.
And this is Tyler specifically?
No, I'm talking about one of our nation's best communities is Altamont, as far as totally integrating AI into the system.
It's amazing.
And all the way throughout, from measuring metrics to every single thing. And if we're going to invest in something, we need to invest in what the next generation is, not what, because we've made that mistake of trying to put bolt-on, stuff onto something. We really need advice on what that next generation is and to be prepared for that.
Well, one example for Tyler now, and again, I'm being neutral here, is they have a desktop version. And a lot of our employees are on the desktop version, and so that already is an indicator that that's not going to support AI.
So to that point, we also are going to the cloud version, which does, in our Tyler system, have some of the AI capabilities built in. It's not on the desktop, but it is on the cloud. They didn't put me on the desktop, they only put me on the cloud, so I don't understand when they're talking desktop, because I'm like, mine does this. So it is integrated. The other thing that we did learn at the conference, the AI piece is huge with Tyler. I've talked to Tim, and I'm trying to set up a demo now for our priority budgeting for going into strategic planning and going, okay, if the parks are super important, how much of our constituents' tax dollars are going into those parks? And showing and using the AI modules to make sure that we're budgeting correctly and to what the priorities are. So they are implementing a lot of the AI. We're just not there yet here in this building, but we're getting there.
Next thing, what's the size of our, you said 300 million for a CFO. What size are we right now in your estimation? I've heard 200 million in capital, and we have 32 million in.
So great question. The question is, that I like to answer with, is what is recurring, repeatable, and then you have one time. And so just from a recurring, we're about a 15 million general fund and 15 million enterprise fund, and throw in some other things in there, special revenues, whatever. $40–50 million is how big we are. Then we have a 200 million one-time capital. So we're stressing our system right now. And this is a good point, if you don't mind me saying, Mayor. So typically, like grants, reimbursements, and what I can get the state to pay for, typically the general rule is 10%. I can charge to administration and overhead. And so if you've got 200 million in capital, at 10% is 20 million at $100,000 per FTE. You needed to add 20 more administrative people to manage the 200 million capital. That's sort of a metric, and I don't think we plussed up.
Okay, sometimes we need to have lunch because, and I'm not a knowledgeable guy, I depend on AI and a lot, but 30 to 60% of the companies that are 50 million have a CFO.
Private sector.
And I know that,
Talking about private sector?
In the private sector.
Yeah, totally different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
public sector, no.
Billing and invoicing, okay, never mind, cash. The qualifications, one thing that Dio is in here, or did he? Is we make sure that we're working on these new titles and these new things, that we have exactly what the qualifications are, so we can take a look at them and make sure we can fulfill that. And then finally, I'm glad you brought up training because, again, maybe it's a different animal, private versus public, but most private sector has a percentage of their overall budget that's dedicated to it on a yearly basis, and that can be from 2 to 5%. And,
Yes.
and that makes sure that if it's not used, you go back and ask why. So it might be something that when we talk about the budget, we kind of look at that. And that keeps us from having to do videos and have actual people doing training sometimes and things like that. But overall, I'll have a lot more questions when I have a chance to go through this more finally. But I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here. You know, I mean,
you.
what you came into and where you and Michelle have got us is very.
It's been a fun 90 days, and thank you for having me so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up is 2025-2026 budget amendments. That would be Michelle.
Yes, so we've been working diligently on this, and I'm going to turn it over to April, but I just want to remind the council, our job as in the finance department when it comes to the budget is we listen to what the departments say their needs and wants are. And then we put it into a nice pretty sheet and give it over to you. It is not our job to decide what should be in the budget and what should be taken out of the budget. But I will tell you that has not happened in the past, and that is why we're where we are today. But going forward, it is not our job to decide. It is the city managers, the councils, to streamline to what it is. We're just putting it into one form and giving it to you all. So April has done a great job of trying to rally all of our departments together to figure out what are the true needs that we need to get through before we go into 2027, things that can't wait for 2027. And that's what we're bringing to you all today. So April?
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, or actually, it's still morning, sorry. Good morning. I'm used to being here at night. There's my head. So we'll get started into this, and we're gonna start with a nice little summary sheet that we have at the beginning here that just something that just says where everything came from, right? What revenues are we using and what is. Because a lot of times we have projects that don't complete in the previous year and we have to carry them into the current year, right? And then we have new projects or items that are being added. So this is just by the fund type. So we'll quickly go through this. On the general fund, your current adopted budget is the $34,884,861. What we are looking at doing in this mid-year budget adjustment is bringing additional revenue that was not spent in 2025 into 2026, totaling approximately the 1.8 or almost 1.9 in that second column. New revenue is 20,000, and I'll explain why that's there. And then, so for carry forward expense, you're looking at 180,000 in the general fund, and then new expense is 1.7 million, with a net change of the almost 1.9, which would make your amended budget the 36,784. And I'll get into a little bit more detail. I just want to go through the summary quickly first, okay? The special revenue funds, so CRA, grant, building fund, and fire fund and cemetery fund is what these are. So your current budget for that is 17.8. We're looking at carry forward revenue of 487. New revenue, which is mostly in grants, actually all in grants, 81,537. You're looking at carry forward expense of 487. New expense of the 81,537. Net change of 568. With a new budget of 18.4. For debt service, there's no changes to debt service right now. Capital, so these are your impact fee funds. These are Cherry Lake Park, South Lake Park, those projects, there's those type of things there. So currently it is 31.7. We are looking at carry forward revenues of 1.3. The carry forward expense is 901. The new expense is 446 with the net change of 1.3, giving you a new budget of 33 million, just over 33 million. For the enterprise fund, we're all familiar that that is our water and sewer. So we are currently at $158.3 million. We are looking at carry forward revenue of $3.6 million. There is no new revenue. There is carry forward expense of $886,000, new expense of $2.7 million with a net change of 2.9, and a new budget of 161.9. So overall, it would change your budget, your entire budget, from 251.9 to 259.3. So now we'll kind of go through, and I'm going to speak to these as I go through. So starting with the general fund, so this just kind of breaks out what I said, right? So we're looking to do carry forward revenue. That is mostly, it is $131,882 that is being carried forward for projects that were not completed in FY25. Mostly that is related to the EAR, the comprehensive plan that is taking place in Tim's department with Wildan, that we're carrying those forwards done, or those funds forward, easy for me to say. We are also looking at Raftellus. So there is currently an impact fee study that is going on with our parks, police, fire, and admin impact fees that was not completed in last year, that we're rolling those those funds forward as well. So now let's get into the new expenditures. So that $20,000, let me just say this right off the bat. The $20,000 in new revenue that we talked about on the first slide is actually insurance revenue that has come in. So when departments have accidents, we have things happen, we get reimbursed for that. It used to be under the old insurance we had, they would go and pay the vendor directly. This insurance prefers to pay the city, which means we have to put the expense in with the revenue then coming back in. Departments, we're not prepared for that this year, and that's probably on me partly for not communicating that as well to them. So that's what we're putting back in, as we're putting that money back into the budget to replenish those line items for them. So the new revenue that we're looking at, so we're looking at $67,118 going to planning and zoning for transportation concurrency management, which is tied to the EAR, for the pass-through, the development pass-through charges, and for advertising. They've just had more advertising than they've typically had, so we just kind of need to replenish their budget a little bit. There is $137,800 for IT for a UPS fix. So currently, what that means is that the city's UPS backup system is functioning. We've had one of those cells, for lack of a better word, go down. So we're operating on the others. To replace that one was $100,000. So to replace all of them is $137,800. We also get a warranty with it. So you're looking at $37,000 more, almost $38,000 more. We felt like that was a little bit better because each of those, Jim had said to me, were about $60,000 a pop just for the cells. You're looking at 1.4 added to IT for a disaster recovery site, which I believe they said will be in Tallahassee. You're also looking at $53,000, so this is where that $20,000 that we're talking about, this is one of the things that you'll see that are going to police for a union attorney and an accreditation/grant consultant, and then repairs and maintenance and vehicles. For the grant fund, where we're increasing budget by $356,537. So what does that break down to? We're bringing forward $275,000 that is going to Cherry Lake, and I always have a hard time, Lake Ave, Cherry Street, streetscape, stormwater improvements. $77,000 that we were awarded this year for the local firearms. So those are an increase in expenditures and revenue. We also have the Edward Byrne Memorial Grant, which was for radar signs in the city. And then we are taking $300,000 from the downtown stormwater to move it into Lake Ave and Cherry Street project. On fire operations, we are increasing by $212,000, which is strictly going to overtime, FICA, and retirement. The fire department has been experiencing, they've been having children, babies, and they've been having injuries, and so then it forces mandatory just because there is a shortage of staff in there. For park impact fees, this is simply a carry forward that is $22,000 for the CCTV portion of Cherry Lake Park. For the fire impact fee, so this is something that we are looking to recognize for the G2 alerting station at Fire Station 3. So we will take it from park impact or fire impact fees, simply move it into the fire construction fund. Discretionary sales surtax. So I gave you a list here. We're increasing by $447,227. So that is going to be $36,000, which is being rebudgeted for police and fire equipment. $322,000 is being added to South Lake Regional Park for IT expenditures. This is for CCTV, this is for internet, this is for sound systems, all of that kind of stuff, which was not originally put into the agreement between the city and the county. This is just something that the city is looking to do. $104,000 being added. $45,700 again for IT going into the Fire Station 3 construction. And then also to help with that, we had $65,000 that was allocated to citywide CCTV that we're gonna take and move out of there and put into the Cherry Lake. So it kind of, instead of assigning additional carry forward monies, we're kind of taking what we've got there and moving it into the project. Live Well grant. When we do the budget, we estimate the carry forward for these projects. Sometimes it can be more that we anticipate in expenditures and less that we anticipate in expenditures. This year, we anticipated more in expenditures than, or carry forward than what we had, so we need to reduce that by the 145. South Lake Regional, you're just adding the 322, which is for the IT items, and then we're also rebudgeting the $45,000 for the Cherry Lake that was carried forward. For the fire station, again, it's the same thing from the fire, just moving the $90,000 into that project. Ronald Sefton Gaffney, that is also rebudgeting for services that were not completed, as well as additional carry forward that's being, for the POs to carry forward, but then extra money too, where we under budgeted in that instance, the carry forward. 400 is the only fund that is not changing, increasing or decreasing revenues. So good job to TJ and his team on that. So we are basically taking funds. They discovered a project, the RAS project, that was budgeted in 400, was eligible for water and sewer impact fees. So we took that, moved it into water and sewer impact fees, and the funds that were there, still there, rather than reduce it, we took and moved it around and added projects or added 2 projects that were already budgeted in 26. So that's just kind of a summary there. That's where you see the 852 that we're moving from the RAS. We're putting money into a utility replacement for State Road 50 relocation, risk and resiliency program, compliance reports, lift station rehab project, 115, wastewater compliance. I don't want to read through each of these. Y'all have the reports there. So just kind of moving money around to fit other projects that are currently budgeted for, not really adding new projects, just rebudgeting. 401, we are recognizing 470 and carry forward that we're tying to drinking water compliance, downtown pressure improvements, State Road 50 utility upsizing and replacement, alternative water supply studies, infrastructure improvements, and a valve cleaning maintenance trailer. For Fund 402, we are recognizing we are asking to recognize $2.8 million in additional carry forward, rebudgeted for services. 1.3 of that is rebudgeted in stuff that was not, services that were not completed in 25, and just the POs are being carried forward with those. There is, and those There is 1 million being added to the Sunshine RAS improvements projects, 20,000 for infrastructure improvements, and then again, a portion of the valve cleaning will be paid out of the sewer portion. It's a split. And last but certainly not least, 405 is just simply funds that are carried forward, projects that were not completed in 2025, and the POs are carrying forward into 2026. So with that, I turn it over to y'all for any questions, comments, thoughts.
Amy Jo?
I'm good.
Stephen? Stephen?
Thank you. I've just been taking it all in, so I don't have any questions right now.
Mike?
Can you go back one slide?
I sure can. Oh, I realize I didn't change my slide, sorry.
Okay, the carried forward revenue. Where
Yes.
did that come from?
So it's money that was not spent in FY '25 for projects, like a lot of these are carried forward projects. It's just money that was not spent in 2025.
Okay, what can we do with that money besides adding it to the budget?
Leave it in reserves? I mean, I think the only option would be to leave it into reserves.
Okay.
Or you can fund one-time project. I mean, you know, you can take and put some of that money invested into capital projects as well. You could, other than utility stuff.
I would explore that option. You have to sit there and say, if we put it in reserves, we're going to get this much interest, or if we put it in the budget, we might be able to use it on these other projects. But it's a carried forward revenue. You don't have to find things to spend it on. You found all these little items to spend all this money on. I don't understand why you had to sit there and think you had to find things to spend the money on to do a budget adjustment. You could just put it in the reserves and leave it, and we don't do any budget adjustment, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
However, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So if there's an important project that didn't get finished and the money didn't get used, and it can get finished this year, by all means, move that over because the project's half finished. But I don't want you to come up with ideas to spend the carried forward money. Because it sounds like to me you're coming up with the ideas, oh, we can fix this, we can upgrade this, we can do that, but it wasn't in the original budget. So I'd rather see it go back into the reserves and make interest until we use it next year.
I don't think she's doing that. I think the department heads are coming to you and asking for that, right? So that's, she's reacting to what our department heads are requesting, and that's where the conversation has to take place.
So
That is,
based on that information, we need to have the department heads come in and justify why they want that money.
so, and I hear you, and I understand where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And my departments, and Tim has been one of them before. I know he's serving as the city manager right now, but Tim knows I'm hard on my departments. And I ask them, do you really need that money? Do you really want that money? But just like Michelle said, it's not my job to tell them no, right? That's up to the city manager, and that's up to y'all, right? I will say that a couple of the things, and especially in general fund, like the UPS fix system, it doesn't seem like a lot. It may seem as though we were trying to find, but we've already had something fail. And one of the things that I did not mention with that project is all of the other units are 7 years old at this point. So if we fixed the one that's gone down and you're spending $100,000, you could then turn around and have another one go down and be spending out another $100,000 that we could have only spent $137,800 on and had a whole new system with a warranty.
Oh, I understood that one perfectly.
Right? Or the disaster reserve. Well, and I'm not sure what. I just want to point out that there are some projects that are necessary in this.
And I think part of the problem that goes back to my original statement is previous finance decided what projects were going to get financed last year and which ones were not. Some of them are mandatory. The UPS system went down. That is something that we can't compare. The shelf life is 7 years, so it was on Jim's radar to put in for the 2027 budget. But when you have a major battery go down and it's going to cost $100,000, and then tomorrow we could have a second one go down, That's why it was put in the budget as one that was, as a budget amendment. The 1.4 million for the disaster recovery, it was in the budget, but it was cut unbeknownst to the IT team last year. It's a major hiccup. If we are in, we thank God we did not have a hurricane last year. We have a hurricane in August and we don't do it, the city can go down completely because there is no backup for it. If a tornado runs through here, something happens, we don't have a disaster IT backup plan for the city to run.
Okay, but if it's in the reserves, it could be easily moved over after the disaster expenses are accrued, correct?
So, yes, but we have to have the okay to go ahead and do and put in the disaster recovery. That's what this is you guys are approving for us to go and get space in Tallahassee for a backup. It's going to cost $1.4 million. And so it takes time. That money's still here until we get the vendor payment and goes, we need to get this paid. And it could take 3 to 4 months. So these are just things now that we would like to do before we go into October 1st that we feel are important, that need to be done, that the departments have come and said, this is a need, not a want. And that's how we've explained it.
Michelle, what I really have a problem with is found money. This is found money, and you found a way to spend every dime of it.
So I would say with that, we have not found a way to spend every dime of it. You see let me clarify. You see what departments are asking for and only to cover what departments are asking for. Because, and I was very cautious with this, and I did not, other than on the projects, okay, so South Lake, those kinds of things, that's the only thing that I pulled forward, all of the carry forward, because those are projects and everything's been paid for 25. So I know that we still have that money. But because the audit for FY25 is not complete, I still have money as of right now for an unaudited balance. I still have about, moving this forward, I still have about $5 million sitting in carry forward for general fund, unaudited. So I left that there rather than bringing forward more. I just brought forward what departments are asking for to y'all to make the decisions. And then once the audit is done, when we do year-end budget adjustment, that's when I will carry forward the remaining of the fund to put into reserves or do projects or whatever council and departments decide, city manager decide to do.
Okay,
Yes.
don't take this personally. You're the one standing at the podium. You're the one I get to ask questions of. So,
You're perfectly fine. I don't take offense,
Tim,
sir.
has all these departments brought these requests to you first?
They typically go through finance, and then finance goes through me.
Okay, we need to change that. We can't have all these departments going directly to the finance department to do a mid-budget change unless there's an important reason to do a mid-budget change, not because there's extra money sitting in an account. So these things need to come through you as the gatekeeper before they come to us. Before she stands at this podium and says, because we went through all this, you explained it all. The department heads came to you and you said that's a good reason to ask for this extra money. So everything has to come through you.
Sure, yeah, this is typically how we have the process. Happy to talk with finance, happy to talk with our department heads in terms of how we can make some changes there. But again, to April's point, there's a significant amount that's still unaudited that could likely be in reserves. And we have to trust our department directors in terms of what their needs are. They understand that money is tight right now, but they also understand that we have to have service delivery, continuity of services, and stability. So I trust them with their recommendations. If there's any specific recommendation in here that we're a little fuzzy on before we take a vote, we could have those individual conversations and briefings with each department head to make sure that we have all the information before you take a vote.
We can't take a vote today anyway, so.
Correct, yeah, today is just information only,
a
no
conversation
decisions.
across the dinner table, right? I mean,
Can we have
It's
a
discussion only.
to have Tim bring all us the individual information about what everybody wants?
Can we all talk and then we'll get a consensus? Can we all talk?
This is the last statement that I was doing. Okay, but you can do it. Good.
No, I just have a few questions, and I know I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to look at Michelle and say, please put actual expenditures from previous year in your slide. Matching up a budget, a theoretical to a theoretical doesn't mean much. It would really help. I mean, I'm an old dinosaur, so I need to see what we actually spent last year versus what we budgeted and then changed and things. So let's a little more factual. How many items weren't budgeted? I know I heard the IT thing. How many items were not budgeted that we have in this list right now?
So forgive me, I have to right now. You said questions were for Tim and Michelle.
Okay, well,
No, I'm just.
Tim, how
I'm
many?
I'm teasing. I had to,
Thanks, Amy.
sorry. Okay, so how many are actual new, or are you asking what's re-budget? I'm sorry, now that I've said that.
That weren't in the original budget that I heard about IT and at the South Lake. Are there any more that weren't budgeted originally?
So, and I hated to correct Michelle a little bit, but I'm going to tweak a word that she makes, and it's asked for versus budgeted, right? So when we talk about it, Jim did ask for the disaster recovery, right, in his original budget for 26. For 26, sorry, I'm working in like 3 years right now, 3 different years. In 26, however, the decision was made prior to us coming to council with it to cut it, and not by me. And not by me. The decision was made prior to that. It was not a conversation that was had, so that wasn't even brought to you to be an option to put into the budget, if that makes sense. In trying to balance the budget, there were decisions made
Last year.
That was
Okay.
common
Yeah.
across the board. It wasn't just IT department. It was.
Yes, there were things across the board. It was not, I just used that one because it's in here.
I remember all that, and thank God we made a little change in that whole process. But again, I'm an old dinosaur. I'm the oldest guy up here, and I come from a different background. But when you make a budget, you make a promise. I don't care whether it's to your shareholders or your constituents. This is what we're taking from you, and this is how we're going to spend it. And I think every time that we break that promise by saying, oh, we don't need this, we don't need CCTVs, right? And that's been in the budget for, if I remember, that was $200,000 for like the last 3 or 4 years, right? That never got spent. And I just want to be very careful moving forward that when we do a budget, that it is the budget. And mid-year, yeah, you can do quarterly adjustments. You can do different things because of the different nature of income coming in, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today at some point. But just adding things and taking it out of that process, everybody but TJ, we ran out of time, had to get up and justify their budget to the council. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And make that promise that we have on record, right? And to come back and say, well, I really don't need this now, but I need it over here. It should have a process that's equally as strenuous, especially if it's $300,000. Because I couldn't vote on this anyway, because I don't know if we're going to get that back from the county, or that's, we fudged by not putting it in, so now the city's responsible for that county project that they're reimbursing us for. There's a lot of questions on that list that I have as we go through, and after this, I'm sure we're going to get a more detail on things to look at, but these adjustments, it's almost like fudgies, and I have worked with government enough to know that in some places, not Groveland, more military places, that if you don't use it, you don't get it. That you've got to spend it. And I've seen great food going off the back of an aircraft carrier, because if we get back into port and we don't reorder that, we're not going to get it on our next budget. So I get very, very cautious about moving this stuff around and people thinking that we can just checkers, because that's not what we promised our people. And if we promise our people we're going to do this in a park, or we're going to have CCTVs to protect you, or we're going to have this or that, we need to deliver on that promise, you know? And I think it goes back to what was said before. What's the application of these changes as we move forward? Where does the Kroger come in here? Kroger.
So there is actually, and I do apologize, I put it on my very first or second slide here. If you look down at the bottom of this slide, there is a note. The money is in there. It is just sitting essentially in a reserve. It's just not included in the budget because it's sitting in the bank earning interest. And I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't want to put in more than what departments were asking for.
I
Didn't want to be
appreciate
greedy.
that. Yeah, I appreciate that so much. And are we 90 days in reserve? What's our reserves right now? Is it 90 days versus, last time I looked, it was our reserve funds for, you know.
Per the charter, yes, I can. Per the charter, we have 15% in general fund is what was required per the charter in general fund.
Yeah, that's the minimum, right? And so does that work out to be, because when I looked at it, it looked like it was 90 days worth of operating capital. Is that right?
I don't have exactly how many days. I like 90 days. I like 3 months versus a percentage. It's just easier to account for. We did look at that this last week. It's about 30 million in cash and money market and small investments that are on hand. With respect to the general fund to meet that rainy day reserve, we have more than 90 days.
We have more than
yes,
90 days.
Yes, sir.
What would be your recommendation on that? Is 90 days enough? Based on what we've learned?
As an ex-treasurer, I love surplus cash and go put it in the investments in the market and have plenty of rainy day funds. The opposite side of that is if you're too solvent and you got too much money, you're not spending that for your constituents, right? It's like your water. You don't want to overcharge water, but we do need to make a profit so we can do pay-as-we-go capital improvements. So it's that fine balance. And so one of our recommendations on the new investment policy that we'll be bringing forward to you is a minimum once a year, the finance department will brief the council on our investment portfolio, where we are, what our returns, what are all those metrics that you're mentioning. So.
With all that said, with your background in public, what is 90 days enough of a reserve?
It's technically enough because assuming you've got some investments to backstop you, per se, but it's typically enough because government has recurring revenue, right? Whereas private sector, we have to go out and make money every month, right? We got to go sell. We tend to have recurring money. We've got ad valorem, we got surtax, we got, the 3rd cents, the 7th cent gas tax, we got county money. So we have some more, we can stretch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think of hurricanes and sinkholes right now and what that would cost. Yeah. Okay, that concludes my questions, I believe. Did you have something that you wanted to say?
So you're saying that the general fund right now is collecting $140,000 a month in interest? If it's in a money market, something like that? Did anyone know that number?
I don't know the number exactly off the top of my head.
So the way that our accounts are set up right now, we have a commercial analysis account. And that commercial analysis account takes all the services that we use, and we have it sitting, and it doesn't make interest, but we use that to offset any fees, so we don't pay any fees. Any above that extra money that's sitting in those accounts is then given an interest rate of 3.65. And that is for our checking accounts and our money market accounts. All of our accounts are making the money. I don't remember off the top of my head if it's 140 per month, but that seems about right for the pooled, for all of our accounts together, not just one account.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask for a consensus to direct the city manager to have all the departments go through him with any adjustments for mid-year budgets in the future.
I already did.
Is that a yes? Stephen, did you get that?
Yep. I'm good.
Happy to do that. I'd also recommend, since we have Mike Fitzgerald and his services available to us, might not be a bad idea if he's looking at our organizational chart processes, to also looking at our budget process, our mid-year budget process, looking at the range percentage in terms of adjustments that we're making, and compare that to best practices, just going forward to making sure that we're making good decisions.
And one last thing, I've heard about disaster money a couple of times. Can we make a fund and just put it in a disaster fund instead of putting it in the budget?
So that's actually something that Councilwoman Carroll had talked about when we were doing budget, and others showed an interest in as well, is having money in the general fund that was set aside for disasters, right? If we got a hurricane, we got hit by Milton, right? We got hit by Ian. So there is currently money in the budget that is put into this budget. We had a strategic initiatives pot of money that is like 1.1 or 1.2, I can't remember off the top of my head. I know the total is like 1.8. That was kind of for those type of things. We kind of gave suggestions from different things that we heard from the council. So as far as a fund, I believe, would that be something we could?
So absolutely, it's a great question. It comes back to policy, just like the 90-day or 15, 20% reserve so we can operate. It's not uncommon to have an emergency contingency policy, and then you establish a floor. We want to keep 2 million in it, 1 million in it, you know, that number is determined. And then the accountants are going to go in there and set up a bona fide fund. And then that cash that's sitting there, when you get to the bottom and it says fund balance, then you can, instead of it being unassigned or just sitting there, you can go ahead, council can either make it restricted, committed, or assigned, and therefore you block it up so nobody can get access without coming through you.
Okay, 'cause I can see this happening every single year. If we don't have any emergencies or disasters, that it's just going to keep flowing over like that, and we're always going to come to this year thing. So, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Strategic initiatives?
Yes.
1.1 million? Who controls what? Is that a
Council.
budget? Are those budgeted? Oh,
Council
so they come
discretion.
back to council and council?
They are put in, so the departments can ask for stuff. It's there for the departments to say, we want to do X, Y, Z, this is something we need, whatever. They have to bring it to council because it's basically put in a non-departmental line item of the budget. And so that means they have to come to council to move it into their budget, requires an amendment. So it would have to come to council for council to approve use of those funds.
So that would be for unbudgeted projects that somebody comes up with in the middle of the year that,
Like the 1.4 for a disaster recovery would be exactly one of those things that we could do, although there's not 1.4 in that line item right now, but.
Could be used for that. My recommendation is if we're good on reserves, to start looking at that with a little bit more intentionality in terms of our CIP this year, rather than just having surprise requests during the middle of the year.
yeah, we've had some big surprise requests and,
Sure.
this year so far. So, yeah, okay, that's very good. You did an outstanding job.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with a smile on your face, too. Thank you.
I love what I do.
Okay. Next up is updates on organizational chart. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So before we get started, most of y'all have seen this in some iteration. Let's start with the first slide. That's a good place to start. So just a little bit in terms of the why on this. So quality of service. We want to make sure that this org chart is not only built for today, but also built for tomorrow. And having a sense of predictability and flexibility. Few other best practices and drivers behind this. We've looked at not only public but private sectors in terms of different title names and descriptions. We talked about the CFO in previous presentations from Mr. Fitzgerald. Growth, we're growing at a pretty quick rate, almost 5% year-to-year growth for the last 7 years or so, and we anticipate more of that over the next 10 to 20 years. Balance. some of our org charts that we've seen in the past, we've seen some people have up to 10, 15, or direct reports. We want to get that to more healthy balance with around 5 to 8 direct reports. Looking also at shared resources, symbiotic relationships, you're going to see some departments paired up into certain umbrellas just to achieve, especially on the maintenance side. We'll get into that. Shifting outsourcing to in-house services. So this has been talked about a couple times by the council in recent meetings, looking at things like building and permitting. I know Woodard and Curran is in the audience, but water and wastewater services over an incremental process of bringing that in-house. Succession planning has been discussed. That's one of council priorities. So how do we set up the org chart in a way that if somebody's out or if somebody's leaving, there's continuity of services, there's also growth projections for staff who are here, and reducing or eliminating single points of failure. That's one of the things that we're trying to achieve. Stability, for staff's sake, for council's sake, the public's sake, better understanding this is our plan, we are growing. How could we be more proactive toward that rather than having knee-jerk surprise decisions made on an annual basis? That creates, anytime you have an absence of a plan or predictability, it creates a sense of, I don't know what's going to happen. And fear and anxiety, especially in high growth areas, tend to happen. So how could we mitigate that? And then, of course, implementing our strategic plan. So how's our org chart equipped to do that? And we looked at areas like informed and engaged community with communications. Financial health is, of course, a huge priority. And then infrastructure and quality of life, community livability, conservation, eco-agrarian lifestyle, things of that nature. So these are our growth projections that we're looking at as part of our comp plan. Every 7 years, we have to do the evaluation and appraisal report. Our focus for that is more looking at the long-term 10 to 20-year time frame. Today, we're looking at more the next 5 years in terms of an org chart. That could grow over time with the next 10 to 20 years, but really looking out to, if we're around 26,500 residents today in 2026, we're going to have about another 5,000 residents over the course of the next 5 years. How can we grow and be more proactive in terms of meeting those growth demands? So this is really the first section of the org chart. This is really your core services. You have your citizens, city council reports to, of course. And the city manager takes action and implements the policies and priorities of the city council. You have the city attorney, which has a direct line to the city council. That's unchanged. A new addition is having a dotted line there, because that tends to be the norm. You want your city manager and city attorney and staff to have a working relationship to achieve the goals that the council has, of course. It's good to be all on the same page. Having a city manager's office, this is not too different from what we have today, but having a city clerk, human resources and communications as direct reports to the city manager. Next up is, I know we got into a finance director versus a chief financial officer. I'm currently the interim city manager, so my goal is to service our city council and make sure that your goals and priorities are in fact prioritized and met. So if the focus is to shift that position into more of a CFO, you could go both ways, but it's a preference of the council, and I do like the idea of thinking more proactive, especially in a growth community. It's good to have that accounting and finances in terms of the fundamentals, but we really need to start doing more in terms of looking out 5-year growth projections, 10-year growth projections. Where is the city going, and where are our finances, where the issues and landmines might be, so that we could be more proactive on that. We've talked a lot about, I've shared my opinion about last year's budget experience, and it's good to make sure that we have some stability in terms of operations, and we understand on a line-by-line basis of where we're going. But we didn't really spend much time in terms of the next 5 years for capital improvements for the city. And when you look at the residents who are looking for parks improvements, roadway improvements, trails, things of that nature, we need to spend more of our time budgeting and forecasting how we're going to meet those demands. With the CFO, you would have finance and accounting reporting underneath that, budget and analytics, and procurement. Those are really the three. And what you won't see here is IT, utility billing. We'll get to that. And another umbrella. We haven't had any assistant city managers or deputy city managers. It's been talked about in terms of succession planning. If a city manager leaves, who's the next in line, who's going to take their place either on a vacation or if someone resigns or retires, who's the next in line on that? You have strategic planning, economic development, CRA, building and permitting, planning and zoning, code compliance, conservation. These are primarily strategy and growth. So we'll get into operations here in a minute. But just looking at best practices from the private sector, CEOs and deputies are typically looking at tomorrow for the organization. How are they going to grow? How are they going to create more revenue, to feed the machine that's providing those services in the infrastructure? Having an assistant city manager / chief operations officer. This is a departure from our existing org chart. Right now, our COO is looking at most of the financing. If you're going to hire a CFO, obviously they're going to be looking at the financial section. So what do you do with chief operations officer? Well, they would provide much needed assistance in the area of operations and infrastructure. We talked about symbiotic relationships, and shared resources was one of the drivers behind this org chart change. When you look at public works and parks, there's some shared opportunities there in terms of maintenance especially. We'll get into researching how to adjust water and wastewater over a multi-year strategy to bring that in-house at some point. But there's other things also like roadway maintenance, park maintenance, landscaping maintenance. These are things that have come back in some of our most recent surveys that the community is looking for improvements on. And we're going to get into staff forecasting using benchmarks, and that will show some deficiencies. And anytime you're looking at deficiencies and you have a constrained budget, anytime you could look at shared resources and doing things in a more fiscally conservative way, those are best practices that we want to entertain. So again, CEO would oversee public works and transportation, water and wastewater utilities, parks and recreation. Utility billing would then move closer to with the water and wastewater utilities, along with information technology. What you see in orange also, I didn't bring this up in the beginning, there's a little legend here. If it's white, it's in-house primarily, and if it's orange, that's currently outsourced. And then public safety director, police, fire, and dispatch. This currently is about half of the city's FTE count. We currently have about 181.5 FTEs. We've grown primarily in public safety in the last several years or so, and our forecast will be indicative of that. You could make the case long-term just to provide the city manager with so a little less on his plate in terms of direct reports and more time to spend on looking at tomorrow, economic development, growth, and strategy. You could look at scenarios where the deputy city manager / CAO could help in terms of guidance and oversight of the city manager's office with the city clerk, human resources, communications. And you could also look at a scenario with the assistant city manager / CAO also looking over public safety. Those are options that are worthy of consideration. There's a very small change. I don't know if you quite saw that, but this is fiscal year 26 to 28. This is the next 2 years. So from 29 to 30, looking at our population going up to 30,000 mark, that should give enough time to shift, if the council chose to do so, to shift in-house for building and permitting. We did have our permitting clerks and chief building official, or at least building manager, actually, that was in-house before a few years back. We shifted with Alpha, who is now Will Dan, to outsourcing that to go along with our chief building official and inspectors. I would recommend revisiting bringing at least the permitting clerks, along with the chief building official / building division manager, back in-house as the first step, and then the next step would be hiring your own inspectors. That's a whole loaded conversation, another presentation that will need more time, but just in a sense of over a couple years, that's probably, if you had low-hanging fruit to move in-house, that's the quicker one to do, which is still, not a overnight shift. The next change that we would be considering would be going out to fiscal year 32. That is when I believe the Woodard and Curran contract comes to completion. If it's not renewed, that is going to be a multi-year task for the city, definitely not an overnight transition. We currently have TJ, not really any assigned in-house utilities expertise. That's primarily outsourced right now with Woodard and Curran. Again, a loaded presentation. This is a much abbreviated version because we were requested to demonstrate a multi-year approach to this work chart. And this is the last slide. Take this with a grain of salt. It's a tentative early version of a draft, right? This is, if you took all of our current FTE counts for each department, totaled up 181 on the staff side, and then looked at best practices in terms of staff ranges from low to high, using both ICMA and then Florida League of Cities for each department. If you did the math by our population projections going out to 2027 to 2032, and especially if you started looking at transitioning building and permitting, landscaping, maintenance, water and wastewater utilities, that total FTE count could jump pretty high relative to where we are today. So it's staggering. I also want to give you this, that is forecasted at the low side of those benchmarks. So we didn't even look at the median or high. We could provide that range. What's also interesting is if you look at that growth projection, you'll notice that police and fire aren't predicted or forecasted to change necessarily as much if you're at the low side. The majority of that change you would see in areas such as utilities, obviously, and building, but then also parks and community services, and streets. These are groups that, typically if they're done in-house, you're having that kind of level of staffing. It's also indicative of some of our most common issues here and deficiencies at the city in terms of either customer service, response times, surveying in terms of areas where we can improve as a city, a lot in terms of landscaping maintenance, street improvements, sidewalk maintenance, things of that nature. This kind of just early glimpse gives us an idea of how we stack up to best practices and benchmarks. So this next step will be looking at this with each department director, with HR. We're working on bringing in, we have a couple proposals for internal assessments. So very similar to what you saw Mr. Fitzgerald present in terms of the finance department, how that is could be structured using best practices. We'd be doing that for each department to get a better feel and understanding of how we need to grow in each department, again, for service delivery and quality of service. At the end of the day, we're here to service the community. And if they have goals and priorities, those are made evident through our council. The council tells basically the city manager how we want to grow, how we want to evolve and grow. But if we're not equipped with the right infrastructure, especially in terms of human capital, we're going to have a tough time, and some of those deficiencies are going to keep coming up. So that's my recommendation for now. I open this up for feedback. It's not a decision today. This is likely going to come up through budget approval, which is typical through a local government. But with that said, I'll shut up and open it up for feedback from the mayor and council.
What is it that you want from us? I mean, this is a over, your idea of an over thing. What is it that you want from us on this?
I would say any expectations in terms of timing, feedback on changes that you would expect, either on title changes or chart changes. Open to your feedback today, or we could have those in our individual briefings that we do on Thursdays, and ultimately lead into how we would adopt this as part of a budget amendment.
Yeah, I would just start out by saying I think that we're bringing on a new city manager, interim city manager, and I think that before we start putting organizational charts in solid steel, that we should get their input. We're bringing them in to get different perspectives, and I know there's a lot of different ideas on here, but I love all the work that's gone into. I'd love to see the whole chart, so we see what that is, like the finance did for their department and everything, to see if there's any holes. But I'll turn it over to Stephen. Can he see this? Stephen?
He'd be able to do. I think he's on Teams.
Stephen, could you have the chart?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep. Yeah, if you want to, Tim, go back to, yep, kind of that one. Okay. A priority, I would say, kind of for leadership is, and from what I've heard from the community a ton, is not the community as general, but especially the business community, is shifting the building and permitting. It seems like there is, not trust there with the business folks that are trying to come into Groveland. So the sooner I would say, and if that's for Tim or, the next person, is I believe you have it for, is it for like fiscal year 2029, Tim?
Yeah, that changed at 29. Correct,
Yeah.
Stephen.
The sooner that I think could happen would be great. And of course, we'd have to go through some workshops of, this is what we're currently paying for outsourced building and permitting. This is what it would look like if we brought those positions in-house. But I do think that there would be more accountability with it. I do like having, 2 or 3 direct reports for the city manager and not 14. I don't think it has to be a CFO position. I think that first one could be the COO, because that looks what Michelle currently has right now. So I don't know if there's been any thought process on who, and I know you're waiting and you don't want to assign names to these things. But until there's been a change in the charter where the CFO could report directly to the board, I just don't see a huge reason to have a CFO instead of the finance director. But those were my initial just concepts from going over. I know, Tim, you and I have chatted a lot about this. So good work. And I think we can keep kind of workshopping it.
Amy Jo?
I agree with Stephen. I also have questions. Could we go to the last one? I have questions. Because let's just start with fire. It doesn't grow that way. So when you get to a certain number of people, and as you're approaching 32,000 people, you're gonna have to add another station. You can't sprinkle in a few firefighters when you add a new station. You have to staff the whole station. So fire grows in chunks. You have to hire 12 new firefighters at a time. Like this says, essentially we're hiring 5. I think we currently need to hire 2 or 3 because of the overtime issues, but that's beside the point. I don't know. Police, do we have 65 sworn officers right now, or is that just staff and officers?
Staff positions, they're not all filled.
Gotcha. Okay. 'Cause
And
I
that's
think-
at the 2.4.
I think that
per
matters
thousand.
too, because as you're getting into policing the community, I think public safety is not really correct here. Let's start there. But I appreciate the work that went into this. I'm not sure how it works as we move forward, though, but let's keep going.
To your point, we had this conversation, myself and the chiefs yesterday, is there are benchmarks that you could use at a very high level in terms of population growth, but there's also what's missing in there is the geography and response
Right,
times,
I think for
especially
fire,
with
that's where
police
the
and fire.
biggest issue comes in, and so
And
police too.
stations. So there's a lot that has to be taken into account. That's why I preface this with take it for a grain of salt. It's a very high-level forecast and benchmark.
I do have one more question for you. So we have on that first screen, but we don't have to go back to it, a assistant city manager and a deputy city manager. Those sound like the same thing to me. Can you explain how they would be different?
Very similar. If anyone needs to know if the city manager is out, who takes his place. If there's two assistant city managers, the deputy typically takes the place.
Okay. So that's the only real difference in like level there or anything?
Well, that's in terms of logistics, but then also when you look at role of leadership, there's current operations, and then there's also planning for tomorrow, there's strategy, there's growth, how to increase the revenue. Those are areas that you'd want your city manager and city leadership to be focused on. Obviously, they have to have an understanding of what's going on the day-to-day of operations, but the more they're freed up for growth, that's typically better, especially looking at private sector.
Okay, and then one more. If we're going from 0 water and wastewater employees to 52 over just a few, that sounds like a pipe dream. Like, that's wild. Is that even
Especially in a 5-year.
feasible?
We would want
Where
to
do you
compare
find
that
those?
to existing, and again, this is a loaded conversation.
Right.
There are goals in terms of cost savings, having more of a local presence, but there's also service delivery, quality of service, and predictability for our ratepayers, our customers, essentially.
I
A
do
lot
feel
of
like we
ground
probably
truthing
need-
would have to go into this. Just as a comparative, there's other cities within this region that have under 30,000 residents who have a staff for water and wastewater of 100 people.
Okay.
If you're going to have an enterprise and an organization that's providing a quality service, especially for something as fundamental as water and wastewater, it takes capital.
Would it even be, like, at this point, I think we probably, I'm kind of alarmed that we have no employees that know, like, water, wastewater, like, designations. Like, I know TJ does, but shouldn't there be at least 1 or 2 on staff to kind of liaison between Woodard and Curran? And
Well, that's one of the things that we're trying to help in terms of not only succession planning, so that
Right.
there's another person in line in case TJ's on vacation or TJ gets
TJ wins the lottery,
promoted
as
to
Michelle said,
governor of the
and
state of
moves to
Florida or
Fiji
something happens.
tomorrow.
You want someone else who has an understanding and is also specialized. Public Works is a very diverse section of the government. You're looking at things like stormwater, you're looking at streets, just maintenance, capital improvement planning, project management, water and wastewater services. So we're having conversations in terms of getting other relief to TJ to provide that continuity of service, but then incremental approach toward if this is in-house, you're not going to go from TJ to 50 people next week. You're going to take baby steps to get there and set the stage for a transition like that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Can you go back one slide? Under public safety, you have dispatch. I think we need to revisit this because the savings to the public that we could have by giving the dispatch up to Lake County is between $680,000 to $900,000 a year. And I don't believe we took that that savings to the public into consideration well enough when it was brought up the last time. Because when I remember listening to it, it wasn't a quality of service, it was some other issue than quality of service. So I think we should bring that back up. Somewhere on this org chart, you need to have somebody who's in charge of grants. We run on grants, and we need to have somebody in this org chart specifically responsible for making sure that we get every grant we need or we qualify for. With the water in the building, is it true that if we bring those in-house, we're going to have at least, a 10% savings just because of the cost markup that a consultant would put on something? It's usually 10 to 15% on top of each employee that an outside consultant would put on something. So we would have that immediate savings if we brought it in-house, right?
We'd have to crunch those numbers, honestly. I wouldn't want to mislead anybody in the meeting, but I could understand that that would be a goal, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because I think that's a very good idea, bringing both the building and the water department in-house, considering how much we've grown since when we put it out-house. What were we, about 10, 15,000 people? When we pushed
around 15 to 17,000, maybe.
Right. So now we're at the point where we should take it back. I totally agree with that. That's all I have. Otherwise, I like it.
Hey, first of all, thanks for getting the conversation going. This is a good way to start. And I'm sure this is going to evolve quite a bit over the next couple months. But first, I'd just ask everybody to just take the titles off, right? The titles can be figured out later, but it's those areas of responsibility, and then it's very important what's under those areas of responsibility. And look at it, too. The reason I think we need to go one more down than this is your succession planning, right? Is when you have these 3 or 4 people together discussing the whole issues of what's going on in the city, and they're, I don't know if you call it an executive committee meeting or deputy city manager meeting. I don't know what you call it, but at least they'll be very in tune of what's going on in the city and be ready, be trained and ready. Same thing with the next ones down, your next group down. And I'd love to see that next stage, because is it going to be transportation and wastewater, and what is that next level, and how you divide up those duties to get them right into disciplines and things. Secondly, I'd say let's revisit the permitting part. Again, I hear that's, you and I are sharing that by text all the time, the permitting issues. And can we can go ahead and look at moving them, but can we analyze why it's taken, 2 years or a year or 6 months or 3 months on these things, and say, where is that log jam happening? Because just moving one thing to another isn't going to solve the problem. We have to figure out, and that might be something that we can look at more immediately than waiting for us to move things around on a chart. But that permitting issue, you and I hear about it almost every other day.
I speak to that really
Yes.
quickly, just to clarify the group. So building and permitting is typically focused on the actual building. We get less complaints and less concerns on a building getting, say, a certificate of occupancy. Where we do have probably the biggest delays and biggest concerns from customer service and lack of predictability and process is mostly on the site development planning phases. And those are complex. You're looking at a whole site that typically includes on-site infrastructure and then off-site improvements. There's things like proportionate share agreements, development agreements are part of that. We do rely on a group of outside experts to review and inspect those in terms of site development planning. I don't want to get that confused necessarily with Will Dan or Alpha in terms of their services on the building side, but that's definitely something under the community development area that we have as a pressing need to improve upon.
Okay. Well, all right. And then Kern. How do CDDs fit in here? We're debating that, and when we have a CDD, the roads go, a lot of this stuff goes. How does that impact this chart as far as how many employees you need and everything else, or is that factored in? If we don't have to take care of stormwater, we don't have to take care of roads, we don't have to take care of parks, we don't have to take care of all that.
That should definitely be part of the forecast in terms of number of FTEs per department. I would imagine that would reduce in areas such as parks, such as streets, as long as you get the CDD approved. That gives you a financial instrument, and that's going to be maintained privately. Our goal is to have public access for these parks and streets, obviously, but anytime we could reduce our liabilities on new growth and having growth pay for growth, that reduces that demand on that FTE count at the city level. It won't be necessarily seen for areas like police and fire or zoning reviews because that's internal. But in terms of roadway maintenance, parks maintenance, stormwater maintenance, things of that nature, that would definitely reduce the pressure.
Yeah, I just brought that up as a plug so that we can understand where we are for the next budget and things. And FTEs, I love, we use that in education a lot, full-time equivalents. But I'd like to also understand the cost. I could care less if you have 200 people making a payroll of $2 million, or 100 people making a payroll of $2 million, or 50 people, as long as the job gets done. And we continue to look at how many people we got instead of how much it's costing. And I'm a firm believer in pay the top quartile salary and make sure that anybody that doesn't perform to the top quartile understands where they're going to be, in the future. But I think that as we go through the budget and as we put this together, we have to put a pencil to it, because telling us how many people there are going to be doesn't tell us where we are as far as our budget and our business and everything else is concerned. And we know we've gotten into some issues before by not understanding what the salaries are. And also, please, as you're putting that together, put in the fully loaded, the composite rates, because ours is a salary plus 25%. That's what we pay, for employee benefits. So let's make sure that we're looking at everything together. But again, this is a lot of work, and I appreciate it so much. And getting the conversation started, it'll be very interesting as we bring on interim managers and the city managers. The first thing I ask in an interview is, what does your organization look like? And it's a great conversation to have, and it's a way to get about $5,000 worth of consulting for free when you do interviews. You can get a lot of different ideas. So thank you for that. And with any other questions before we move on? All right, thank you so much. And moving on to the next item, I think it's our interim city manager line, right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I've got Dia Prasad, HR Director. He's going to give a brief update in terms of where we are on the permanent city manager search and RFP process for recruiter. And then we have a special introduction to make to you tonight as well, or today.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As you have directed us to go out and do an RFP to selection of an agency to hire a city manager. On March 24th, we put out a solicitation. It was closed on April 7th. We had a total of 7 different companies that bid on the solicitation. Our next steps with this, we've completed the evaluation. There were a total of 5 people on the committee. We've completed the evaluations, and our next step is to have a public meeting. And so that's scheduled for the 23rd at 1 p.m. It's really where the evaluation committee will come together, discuss their scores, and at that point perhaps have an opportunity to make a number of different recommendations. One of them is to maybe publicly advertise our interviews or start a direct negotiation with the highest ranking firm, or we can proceed to contract award and execution for that selection for the permanent city manager. At that point, we will engage whichever vendor we pick and provide them with our scope that we have developed, and they'll go out and present us a candidate, at which point I'll engage the council and set up one-on-ones. That's the first phase in an interview process with them. In tandem with this, at one of our workshops, the council had discussed the idea of having an interim city manager, someone that would come in, look at our department organization and structure, and also make some recommendations, clean up some of the deficiencies we have, so that someone, when they come in to the position of a permanent city manager, will come in, with a clean slate. So I went out and talked to FCCMA, League of Cities, and different entities that operate within government that could provide advisory. In those talks, came across several different individuals, but one that we have engaged to act as an interim city manager is Mr. Howard Brown, and he's here today. I know some of you have met and have spoken to him, so I'll just take a moment and just have Mr. Brown just come up to the podium just to introduce himself, and then we can answer any question you have. Mr. Brown.
First of all, thank you. My name's Howard Brown. I am currently the CEO and founder of a company called Local Government Consulting Group. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, all other appointed officials. Happy to be here this evening. What I do primarily is provide interim city manager services. And so this meeting was very helpful because all of what I heard this afternoon, or afternoon, is exactly why you need an interim city manager. Because there are some things that need to happen within the next couple of weeks that while your current interim is doing a good job, he may or may not be the person you select as a permanent city manager, and I'm not applying for a permanent city manager job. So I'm here to really push through some things and inform you on some best practices and work with your existing staff and work with you collectively, individually and collectively, to put together a plan of action that in the next week, 2 weeks, 30, 60 days, that you have the information and recommendation that you need to move this body forward to the next level. What's good is this, and I'm glad to hear this, that you have already started the process to engage a search firm, because the search firm is going to provide the credibility that you need to recruit someone to come to Groveland. Groveland is a nice community, okay? It's got a really nice downtown. But right now you need someone to really walk through your existing strategic plan and put together like an action plan of what's going to happen in the next week, couple of weeks, 30 days, 60 days. I don't plan on being here long if I'm selected to come help you. But I will be here long enough to get things moving, working with Tim and Dio and your staff. This is what I do. I don't, I'm not trying to come here and convince you otherwise. You have my resume. These are exact things that I've been involved in the last several communities that I've managed as an interim. And so from data centers to development, all the things I hear, I've already been through that. And I understand the complexity that you have here in Groveland. Fairly new council, some have been here for a while, and a different way of doing things. Some of the things that I saw, this will not take 2 years. It won't take 1 year. It will take whatever you think it takes, because you are the governing body and you have a mandate to carry out what you think the residents are, their wants and needs are. And so I find myself in these positions all the time to really come in and really help things along. And so, I could go through my resume. CEO and founder of a company that provides interim city manager services. I'm a credentialed ICMA city manager. I'm also a certified urban planner. I've worked all over the country as a city manager in some of the most urban areas and some not so urban areas. I worked in urban, rural, suburban communities all over the country in major metropolitan markets. And so I know Groveland, and I don't know anything negative about Groveland other than there's some tough politics right now, but that's not uncommon with elections. Elections have consequences, and when new people come in, they have a different way of doing something. And so I recognize those things. And so my job as the manager is to really evaluate and receive the information I'm getting from the board and create an action plan centered around best practices, the strategic plan, and working along with the staff to get things done quickly in a timely manner. And so before that, I was the village manager in Anytown, Florida, which is in South Florida. Before that, I was the city manager in Bell, California, which is in Los Angeles County, California. Before that, I was the city manager in Muskogee, Oklahoma, which is in the Midwest. And so I've been all over. Primarily, my body of work has been here in Florida and Georgia primarily. And so with that, I will end with, if there are any questions, I'd love to.
Just some, I think there are several in Florida, that cities like us, that you've gone in and done the interim manager job,
Yes.
like, was it Miami Springs and Indiantown?
Yeah.
And what are all those?
Yeah, and Fort Meade, Florida. It's next to you, south of you in Polk County. They were challenged with bringing in a data center. And obviously there is a lot of controversy around data centers because they're not appropriate everywhere. And so in Fort Meade, you know, I was able to negotiate a development deal for a data center there, but this was on an appropriate site, not near residential areas, those kinds of things. You know, I also dealt with some redevelopment stuff. And the CDDs in Indiantown, Florida, similar to Groveland, there are 4 CDDs. 2 of them are under construction now. The town will grow from 8,000 to about 36,000 people in the next 3 years. And so I was part of all of that there in Indiantown. In fact, I was able to convince Florida's newest city to acquire an investor-owned utility, and we were able to make it profitable. We actually absorbed their staff, and I was there from the whole acquisition to implementation, and all that was done in less than a year. We were able to work with the Department of Environmental Protection, which the SRF loan program that I've heard you mention here earlier, we used that program, and we used our status as a rural community to get loan forgiveness. And I believe, based on what I know and read about Groveland, I believe that you're eligible for loan forgiveness. It's a loan that you get from DEP that can be converted into a grant, a large portion of it, 80%. So we bought an $8.5 million, 1.6 million gallon per day water plant, and we were able to get, for $8.5 million, valued $1 million worth under fair market value, and we were able to get 0% interest and loan forgiveness of 80%. And so, you know, those are the kinds of things that I've done. And capital projects, I've probably done maybe $1 billion worth of capital improvements all over the country in different states, including California, which I don't like to bring up. But I'm a Floridian by nature. I'm from Pensacola, Florida, 5th generation. I'm not some city slicker. I'm a country boy, but worked in the city. So that's kind of what I fashioned myself at. But
You don't? Yeah.
No, no offense, everything sounds good. I just, in the name of stability, I kind of feel like we kind of need to choose a city manager and just keep Tim as the interim. I'm kind of leaning towards that. Stability there is a big thing.
I was fortunate to have over an hour-long conversation with you, and I'm very confident that at the place where Groveland is right now, that you would help us tremendously in moving forward. So I look forward to that.
Stephen?
Yeah, I'm a little confused too. Are we just interviewing one person for the interim spot, or is Mr. Brown like one of 3 that we're going to be interviewing?
Consider who? Excuse me?
For the interim spot, are we just interviewing? I'm just confused on the process. Are we interviewing like two or three additional people for the interim, or did staff only get one person for us to interview for an interim spot?
How many, Dio, how many have we interviewed?
2 or 3 people, but during the process, most of them either dropped out, so we ended up with one person in the end.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'd be more comfortable on having multiple people to interview, and that's not anything again from Mr. Brown. I've just been, while we've been chatting, I know Tim is working on setting up a time for Mr. Brown and I to speak. But I can see some of your background. I see you were at Indiantown, Florida for a while. It looks like they have a population of about 6,000 people. I'm sure you have other areas that you've been at for a while that have a lot more people, I'm hoping. But yeah, I'm more where Amy Jo is on keeping stability until we hire a permanent. And then also, if we are going to have a interim, and that's what was voted on, I would think that we would need to at least interview, 2 or 3 individuals that staff found. We're putting out an RFP for a city manager company to actually then put out for the actual city manager. So I think we have to, if we're creating processes, I think we need to follow through with everything. So if we are going to bring on another city manager in the interim, that it's a transparent process on how we're bringing that person in. And it can be done in a quick way, but I don't think just having the council interview one person and then select that one person is not the most transparent way. But I look forward to meeting Mr. Brown at a future date, and then looking more into his background and history.
Mr. Mayor, I'm a little confused. We're not looking to hire Mr. Brown as a replacement to Tim. We're not looking to hire him to help Tim, correct?
No.
No?
Let me refresh everybody's memory. And I'd like to try to handle this as delicately as possible. We hired Tim, we asked Tim to move up until we could get an interim city manager. We needed an interim city manager to come in and help us straighten things out so that we could get a city manager of the quality that wouldn't come in to straighten it out with the long-term issue. That was what we voted on and moved forward with. I would think it would be a disservice. Right now, I think this is an opportunity for our staff to be exposed to somebody that's already been in 10 or 15 other cities, and done things that is not going to be here permanently, but gives them an idea of other ways to process and to get things done. I will also say, as we're talking this, we had a conversation in January with the former city manager who told us who was or wasn't able to move up. Do you remember that conversation? So that right in itself says that we need to bring somebody in, because I think it's a crime to have people working for 7 years and not be ready to take over that next job according to their boss. So an interim city manager should be brought in my opinion, just one vote, my opinion, to bring in those systems, those styles. Look at somebody else that came in from outside. What's happened? That it was never in government, but what's happened to get things going and get things moving more than it was before. I would expect the same thing with the interim city manager. And the fact that we had 3 and two dropped out and we have 1 left, I would say let's just check out his background. I did. And I would say, I think everybody was asked to call or to already to interview the candidate. So I would expect everybody to get that interview done, and then we'll bring it back and take a look. But the longer we wait, we're going to get into budgets. If there's other systems that we want to look at, if there's other things that we want to do, then based on this new knowledge that comes in, now's the time to get it out there. This is in no way slighting Tim. We work very, very close together, and he does a great job. Just different perspective coming in for, I think I was guaranteed 4 months. Everything would be right in 4 months. Don't do a moonwalk on me now. 4 months. So let's take a look at that. And if you have concerns, deal right with Mr. Brown to get your questions answered and move forward. But I think we need to, it's just my personal opinion, that we need to bring some different ideas and perspectives into the city right now, based on what we know has happened before. Okay.
That brings one
Do you want to
question.
go back, or I have some things, but after Jay Cox?
What? I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
I was going to say I had some comments, but after Mr. Jay Cox.
He said he has some comments after Mr. Jaycox, because Jaycox, they both started talking at the same time, I think.
The question is, if it takes us 6 months, can he commit for the 6 months? We're not putting another person in between.
No, I'm just saying that in our talk, I kind of asked him how long it would take. So, go ahead, tell us, Mr. Brown.
I'm available now, and that's the reason why this was attractive to me. I'm not available long-term. I have other obligations that will come into play in the next 3 months, So that's what's really giving me some pause about 6 months or more. Every community I've been in, I get there as the interim, and then they want to keep me there. And so, unfortunately, I'm not available after 6 months or 4 months. So that's what I indicated to the mayor.
He's answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then also, Mr. Jaycox, by that, we should have the systems in effect that if we needed to put somebody in that place, that they could execute on those systems, It's just a matter of getting the systems, and systemic issues, I think, is where we're needed. Stephen, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I did not support Tim in the initial vote, and I've been very pleasantly surprised. I know the mayor had mentioned something of what we had heard from the previous city manager. The previous city manager is not here anymore. I can only base on my own experience and what I've seen, and I've been very, pleasantly surprised working with Tim. And that's not to say I wasn't expecting it. I think Tim has really stepped up in the past few weeks, and everything I've given to him, I've heard back very quickly, and things have been moving in the right direction. So obviously I'm just one vote too, but I don't, I'm going to speak with Mr. Brown, but at this point my vote would be to stay with Tim.
Okay. Well, we're not voting here. We'll have that vote coming up at a council soon meeting. And do you have more to say, Mr. Dio?
I was going to say, since also, the RFP process is a long way out already. We're essentially going to be award next week on the 23rd. So that 3-month timeline, 4-month timeline, I'm very confident in the next 2-3 months that we'll be able to have a permanent city manager.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Do you have anything?
For me? No, I think ultimately, whatever council decides to do, it has to be something that you collectively as a body are comfortable with. I do want to thank Mr. Brown for being here. You couldn't ask for a more experienced, well-credentialed person to be in that seat to interview for this. So I'm happy to serve wherever the council needs me. And I feel like all staff feels the same way.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate those words. And Dio, thank you for putting this together. And that will bring us to the end of our agenda. I would say, so we got a lot of staff here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, the legislative extension starts next week, right? And topic is property taxes. And I hope staff and everybody's watching that, because that will impact our budget significantly. I hope right now I'm operating under that $4.5 million if we lose Homestead, right? And if we lose there's several different iterations they have up there, but as you are putting budgets together, you might want to look at, hey, this is one, this is the other, if something happens, if something doesn't happen. Because what they're not going to discuss is how to replace that money that's not going to be here from the state. So I hope everybody tunes in and talks to their local representative. Mr. Yakowski is ours, and Mr. Truenow is our senator. And feel free to pick up the phone and call them if you don't think things are going the way they should be, because they really respond to that. With that said, thanks everybody for your time. And
Mayor, I
yes,
had one quick thing before you do the gavel.
I couldn't understand that. Say it again.
I just wanted to check in before you hit the gavel on, I know we got the email about Barbara. Is staff, Tim, are we doing anything as like a council or anything for her, like sending flowers or anything?
Yeah, Lisa Cortese in our office should be taking care of that, but we'll have a card. I'm not sure if everyone got that email. She had a close family member pass away, unfortunately. That's why she couldn't be here tonight. She had to leave to go out of town, but you should be expecting a card to sign and flowers, and if council has any other ideas, we're open-minded on that.
Perfect. I just want to make sure we are doing something because I know that's, she's a great addition to our team. So.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Stephen. Appreciate it. Madam Attorney, you have anything? Anything for us? Okay. Well, with that said, adjourned.